So there I was, living the quiet life I thought I'd finally earned. I moved to Willow Creek Estates for the white picket fences, the friendly block parties with way too much potato salad, and the promise of peaceful retirement after 12 years as a Navy SEAL. Instead, I got Karen. Karen Whitlock, self-appointed queen of the HOA, clipboard permanently fused to her left hand, purse dog under her right arm, and an ego bigger than Texas. Officially, the HOA had been dissolved last year after a board scandal over misused funds. Spoiler alert, Karen never gave up power. She invented a new title, Community Standards Liaison, which basically translated to dictator with no leash. To be fair, I try to keep my head down. My 8-year-old daughter Emily, and I just wanted a fresh start. She'd been through enough after losing her mom. All we cared about was peace and maybe a few hummingbirds visiting the bird bath I'd set up in our front yard. Big mistake. One Saturday morning, Emily and I were refilling the bird bath when Karen came striding up like she owned the sidewalk. "Mr. McBride," she said, peering over her bifocals like I was a delinquent teenager. "Your decorative water feature is in violation of Code 7.2, unauthorized wildlife attractants." I blinked. "Karen, it's a bird bath. The birds like it." She sniffed. "Exactly. And birds bring bird droppings. This affects curb appeal." I kept my cool. Years in combat zones will do that to a man. The old HOA rules don't apply anymore. You'd need a community vote to enforce anything. Her lips curled into what I assume she thought was a smile. Oh, I have my ways of enforcing things. 2 days later, I got a fine in the mail, $500. Not from a real HOA, just an official-looking letter from the Willow Creek Compliance Board, which, as it turns out, only had one member, Karen. I laughed. Ignored it. Karen escalated. First, she left notes taped to my door in bright pink paper. Final warning. Then she reported me to animal control for unlicensed wildlife care. They laughed her out of the office. So she got creative. Thursday afternoon, I was under the truck changing the oil when Emily came running out, tears in her eyes. "Daddy, there's men at the door. They say we have to go." I wiped my hands and stood up. 2 men in reflective vests were on my porch, not utility workers, no badges. One held a clipboard, the other had a walkie-talkie and a mean smile. "We're with Willow Creek Compliance Enforcement," vest number 1 announced. "Your unpaid fines have triggered a child safety review under community bylaw extensions. We have the authority to remove minors from unsafe environments." I stared. "You're what?" Vest number 2 stepped forward. "You can contest it later. For now, the child comes with us." That's when I saw the black SUV parked at the curb, rear door open, as if they thought this was going to be easy. I was calm. Too calm, probably. "You have paperwork?" I asked. Karen approved it. "That's all we need." "No judge's order?" "Sir, you're obstructing compliance officers. Step aside." I didn't step aside. In fact, I stepped forward. Here's the thing about Navy SEAL training. It doesn't just teach you how to fight. It teaches you how to recognize amateurs. These guys? Amateurs. Thugs hired by Karen. Maybe they thought the retired dad with a bad back would be an easy mark. They thought very, very wrong. Vest number 2 reached for Emily. That's when the world flipped upside down, literally, for them. Let's just say by the time the county sheriff rolled up 10 minutes later, those compliance officers weren't standing tall anymore. They were on the ground screaming about their knees. And Karen? She was already dialing her lawyer. Too late. Because what none of them knew was this. I wasn't just a SEAL. I was also a licensed security consultant, and I had just triggered a countermeasure that would unravel every shady thing Karen had built. 15 minutes after I left 2 grown men crying in my driveway like toddlers who lost their sippy cups, the police rolled up, 3 squad cars, lights flashing. Officer Mills stepped out first. Tall, built like a linebacker, with that I've seen too much suburbia nonsense look. He and I knew each other loosely. His niece was on Emily's soccer team. He took one glance at the scene. 2 men moaning, a black Escalade with no plates, Karen pacing and rehearsing whatever nonsense she thought would get her out of this. and me, standing calm, arms folded, Emily tucked safely behind me. Mike Mills nodded, eyes narrowing. What happened? Karen jumped in before I could speak. Officer, arrest him. He assaulted HOA officials during an authorized child welfare intervention.
He stopped.
Held up a hand. Pure dad mode. You quiet. Then he turned to me. Your version. I laid it out short and sweet. 2 men grabbed my daughter. I intervened. They have no legal authority. Their fake IDs were in the grass where they dropped them. Officer Mills turned to the 2 groaning men. Names, Jim Keller and Brad Dixon. One whimpered. We work for the HOA enforcement team. There is no HOA enforcement team, Mills growled. That's when Mills did something I respected. He called for backup, not more officers, but a county child welfare investigator. Someone real. Someone who could untangle the web Karen was spinning. Karen tried to interrupt again. It was an emergency relocation action authorized under Bylaw Section 914B. Officer Mills didn't even look at her this time. Ma'am, unless Bylaw 94B involves felony kidnapping, you're going to want to stop talking. The 2 men were cuffed. Karen wasn't, not yet, but the storm clouds were forming. That night, once things calmed and Emily was asleep with a baseball bat next to her bed, her idea, I dug into the Maple Hollow HOA documents. Here's where my Navy intel training kicked in. I wasn't just some muscle with a sharp right hook. I specialized in reading between the lines, contracts, bylaws, the fine print most people ignore. And, oh boy, did Karen's fine print stink like last week's tuna casserole. Violation number 1. The HOA's Child Welfare Intervention Policy didn't exist. Karen had added a draft version to the bylaws without a community vote. Illegal as heck. Violation number 2. The so-called enforcement division wasn't just fake. Karen had paid the 2 goons under the table. No W-2s, no tax records. Classic tax fraud. Violation number 3. Her recent push for Family Relocation Authority had been slipped into a December HOA newsletter, the kind most people throw out with junk mail. And even then, it had no legal weight. By midnight, I had a 3-page report ready, not just for the police, for the HOA board, and most importantly, for my attorney. Her name was Rachel Tran, HOA specialist, former prosecutor, known as the Velvet Guillotine. She didn't just win HOA cases. She ended them. I handed her the 3-page report, plus the security footage from my doorbell cam showing the 2 idiots grabbing Emily. Rachel smiled like a cat who just found a laser pointer. I love when they make it this easy. She leaned forward. Mike, they violated your parental rights, broke HOA regulations, committed attempted kidnapping, and best part? Karen's tampering with the bylaws opens up civil liability for fraud. She paused, tapping her pen on the table. And once we prove misuse of HOA funds to pay those fake enforcers, she'll be lucky to manage a lemonade stand without an ankle bracelet. Just when I thought Karen would turtle up, hire some shady lawyer, and pray this all went away, she went full nuclear. 2 days later, a notice of foreclosure proceedings showed up taped to my front door. According to the notice, the HOA was initiating a lien foreclosure on my property for excessive fines, supposedly unpaid violation fees totaling $11,750. Yeah, $11,000 for what? Unauthorized flagpole. Aggressive landscaping. Noise violations for military-style training exercises in the backyard, aka Emily and me playing catch. And my personal favorite, child endangerment due to non-compliant play equipment. In other words, pure fiction. But here's the thing about fiction. It falls apart under cross-examination. Rachel smiled when she saw the notice. They just walked into the trap. We've got them, fraudulent fines, abuse of lien processes, harassment. You're going to own their sorry little HOA by the time we're done. As the legal gears started turning, something interesting happened. Neighbors who'd once waved politely but kept their heads down started stopping by. Mrs. Dupree from 3 doors down brought over a casserole and whispered, "She fined me $200 for having a mailbox flag shaped like a cardinal." I've been afraid to fight her until now. Mr. Alvarez, a retired Marine, nodded at me while mowing his lawn. "Got your 6, brother." always thought Karen was nuts. Even sweet old Mr. Rosenthal, who rarely left his porch, dropped off a manila envelope full of HOA newsletters he'd saved for years. Proof that Karen had been slipping in unauthorized bylaw changes without votes. The more Karen tightened her grip, the more people slipped through her fingers. And Rachel? She wasn't just filing a lawsuit. She was drafting a recall petition. Karen wasn't stupid. Ruthless, yes, but not stupid. She tried to shore up her defenses. Called an emergency HOA meeting. Board members were told not to speak without her approval. Residents were told the meeting would address security concerns and dangerous behavior from non-compliant homeowners. She meant me, but guess who else showed up? Officer Mills, off duty, but very interested. Rachel Tran, clipboard in hand. 3 news reporters from the local affiliate. And nearly 60 residents, some holding recall signs. Karen strutted to the podium like a dictator clinging to her last thread of power. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, recent events have been exaggerated by malicious individuals seeking to undermine our community standards. We must stay united. I stepped forward, calm, controlled, holding a copy of my lawsuit and the recall petition. This community isn't yours to command. I dropped the papers on the table. The thud echoed through the silent room. Rachel added, and the sheriff's department will be serving you with a formal notice of investigation for bylaw fraud and misuse of funds. Karen's face went pale as skim milk. If you thought that was wild, wait till you hear what Karen did next. And trust me, it involves a golf cart chase, a shredding machine, and a subpoena. You'd think she'd back down. Nope. By sunrise the next day, every mailbox in Willow Creek had a fresh, bright yellow flyer, due to ongoing disruptions caused by certain residents. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, Karen Whitlock, the self-appointed community standards liaison, decided it was time to take action. She declared a safety protocol, claiming it was for the good of everyone. According to her, all children were to remain indoors unless accompanied by a certified HOA safety warden. Failure to comply would result in fines and even county intervention. Honestly, it was hard not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Certified HOA safety warden? She had basically created her own private police force. Emily, my daughter, peeked over my shoulder as I read Karen's notice. Daddy, does this mean I can't go to soccer today? I ruffled her hair and reassured her. Honey, the only thing this means is Karen's finally lost what little sense she had left. By noon they appeared, 4 guys in mismatched security uniforms riding around in, of all things, golf carts. One even had flashing orange lights duct taped to the roof. Another wore a paintball mask. They cruised up and down the streets like mall cops on parade. A neighbor joked they looked like a Dollar Tree version of SWAT. I didn't laugh, though, because these weren't just clowns. They were dangerous clowns. They stopped kids riding bikes, questioned teenagers walking dogs, and even tried to escort Mrs. Alvarez's grandson back inside her house when he went to get the mail. By the end of the day, Karen's so-called safety patrol had issued $3,000 worth of fake citations. And who was collecting the money? Karen, of course, right into her PayPal account. Officer Mills came by my place that evening. Mike, I don't even know where to start. We've got reports from 10 different families about harassment. I handed him a file Rachel Tran had compiled. It gets better. The safety wardens aren't licensed security officers. They're not even bonded. And 2 of them have criminal records, assault and impersonating law enforcement. Mills ran a hand down his face. That explains why they got so jumpy when we showed up. Then he leaned in. Karen's pulling strings at the mayor's office. Somebody's slowing down the warrant process. I wasn't surprised. Corrupt small-town officials and power-hungry HOA queens go together like barbecue ribs and heartburn. But I had an ace up my sleeve. That weekend, the Patriot Riders arrived, 30 veterans from the Army, Navy, Marines, and even a few Air Force guys. We invited them to tag along. They rolled into Willow Creek on motorcycles and pickup trucks, American flags flying, not to start trouble, just to stand watch. Every time Karen or her safety wardens approached a kid or neighbor, a Patriot Rider just happened to be nearby recording. Within 48 hours, the fake citation stopped. Karen tried calling the sheriff again, but Mills politely told her to stop wasting county resources. His quote, "Veterans enjoying the sunshine isn't a crime." But Karen wasn't done yet. The HOA board, what was left of it, had finally agreed to release the financial records Rachel Tran had requested for the lawsuit. Those records were kept at the old Willow Creek Community Center. The plan was simple, a public handover, easy and transparent. Or so we thought. The morning of the scheduled release, the community center's fire alarm went off. By the time the fire department arrived, smoke was billowing out the side door. But no, the building wasn't on fire. Karen had wheeled in an industrial shredder and was feeding stacks of financial documents into it like a woman possessed. Literally. Her gloves were stained with ink and toner. Several board members, including poor Mr. Rosenthal, stood by in shock. Rachel arrived 5 minutes later. She didn't say a word, just filmed the whole thing. Karen shouted at her, "These records are private. You have no right." Rachel calmly replied, "They became public the moment you started charging unlawful fines and misusing community funds." That's when the county investigator finally showed up, freed from mayoral interference, with a search warrant. Karen tried to flee out the back door. She didn't make it past 2 Patriot riders who just happened to be stretching their legs by the exit. Karen was arrested on the spot. The list of charges was long. Destruction of evidence, fraudulent fines, extortion, harassment, hiring unlicensed security, attempted kidnapping by proxy, tampering with HOA bylaws, tax fraud. When they cuffed her, she still tried to protest. "I was protecting the community. I was enforcing standards. You'll all thank me when property values plummet because of him." She pointed at me. Officer Mills didn't even blink. "Ma'am, I think the only thing dropping today is your bail eligibility." As they loaded her into the cruiser, Karen screamed, "This isn't over." But we all knew it was. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Rachel Trent outlined the settlement plan: full dissolution of Karen's self-created enforcement rules, refunds to every resident fined unlawfully, a community election to replace the entire board, and a motion to ban any future unilateral enforcement actions without supermajority votes. The residents voted unanimously in favor. Mr. Rosenthal stood and made an announcement. "I'd like to nominate someone for the new HOA president, Mike McBride, the only man who stood up for this neighborhood when the rest of us were too scared." I politely declined. "I didn't fight for power," I told them. "I fought for my daughter, for all of our kids." The crowd applauded. Even the mayor, under his own investigation now, kept his mouth shut for once. A week later, Emily had her soccer game. No more fake patrols. No more yellow flyers. Just parents cheering kids playing. As Emily ran up for a hug after the game, she asked, "Daddy, does this mean the bad lady's gone for good?" I smiled. "Let's just say she's on a long timeout." And in my pocket, the court summons for Karen's trial. She was facing not just fines, but possible jail time. Her house was even up for sale to pay restitution. Willow Creek was free. And justice? Justice was right on schedule. Karen Whitlock, she wasn't one of them. You'd think getting arrested, shredding financial records, and being charged with fraud, harassment, and conspiracy would make a person lay low. Nope. As she was cuffed and hauled off, she declared, "I will clear my name and expose the lies." Her lawyer, a sweaty, balding man named Larry Peters, who looked like he'd just Googled how to defend HOA fraud the night before, promised the same. So when court day came, everyone grabbed popcorn. Literally. Rachel even brought a custom-printed bucket that said Karen's Courtroom Meltdown, season finale. The county courthouse was packed. Willow Creek residents sat shoulder to shoulder, reporters lined the back, and even the Patriot riders were there, American flag patches gleaming. Karen arrived in a stiff navy skirt suit that looked 2 sizes too small, dragging her clipboard like a kid clutching a security blanket. She glared at everyone like we were on trial. Her safety wardens were nowhere to be seen. 2 had flipped to the prosecution in exchange for plea deals. I sat up front beside Rachel and Officer Mills. Emily wasn't there, of course. She was at school. blissfully unaware that today would finally slam the door shut on Karen's HOA reign of terror. Larry Peters opened with a speech that would have made a soap opera writer blush. Ladies and gentlemen, my client is not a criminal. She's a hero. A brave woman forced to defend community values against dangerous elements, namely Mr. Michael McBride and his violent, unregulated friends. Several jurors visibly rolled their eyes. Peters waved a finger at me. This man assaulted law-abiding citizens. He intimidated the HOA board. He weaponized military connections to terrorize good suburban families. Mills whispered, "Is he describing you or Batman?" Rachel almost choked on her popcorn. Then Karen stood. She wasn't supposed to speak yet, but Karen never let rules stop her. "Your Honor, I was upholding standards. These people refused to comply. They mocked safety protocols. And Mr. McBride's combat training made him a public threat." Judge Callahan, an older man with silver hair and a no-nonsense stare, banged his gavel. "Miss Whitlock, sit down. You'll have your turn. Interrupt again, and I'll hold you in contempt." Karen huffed but obeyed for now. Then it was Rachel's turn. She stood with calm, measured confidence. Unlike Peters's dramatic theatrics, she didn't need volume. She had facts. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Whitlock orchestrated a fraudulent HOA entity to impose unauthorized fines, hired unlicensed personnel with criminal backgrounds, and manipulated community regulations for personal financial gain." She clicked a remote. A PowerPoint appeared. Slide 1. The fake bylaws Karen created. Slide 2. Bank records showing fines deposited into Karen's personal accounts. Slide 3. Photos of Karen shredding documents at the community center. Slide 4. The so-called safety warden's criminal histories. Slide 5. Screenshots of Karen threatening residents with legal action for made-up infractions. Slide 6. Body cam footage of Officer Mills confronting Karen's hired goons at my house. Rachel's voice stayed steady. "Finally, the prosecution will demonstrate that Miss Whitlock's abuse escalated to unlawful restraint of a minor, McBride's daughter, an act designed to coerce compliance through fear." The room went still. Even Karen's lawyer looked queasy. But Rachel wasn't done. "Your Honor, we have newly recovered emails obtained via subpoena from Miss Whitlock's personal server." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Slide 7. An email Karen sent to her safety wardens. Asterisk, use the citations aggressively, especially families supporting McBride. Make an example of them. Will recoup costs once they sell. Asterisk. Slide 8. Another email to Larry Peters. Asterisk, if the McBride kid leaves the neighborhood voluntarily, our problem solves itself. Brainstorm legal angles to make that happen. Asterisk. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. I felt my fists clench. They targeted my child. Not just me. Not just the neighborhood. They targeted my little girl.